Well, welcome to David Caldwell's mill replica. This is a project that started in the mid-90s. We had built the interpretive center, which is up the hill. David Caldwell had had a small mill on his property here on North Buffalo Creek, which is over here. His mill was actually about halfway between here and Hobbs Road and on the other side of the creek. We have found some of the remnants of support structures on the other side of the creek through archaeological investigations and so forth. Stan Tanger had really wanted to have a replica of David Caldwell's mill built after we had built the interpretive center up the hill. In 1995, we actually commissioned full plans. The project went through periodic discussions with Public Gardens Committee and Greensboro Beautiful and so forth. In 2009, I believe, the project kind of got put on the shelf due to budget constraints and the recession. About 5 years ago, it was reactivated. I built a scale model to show what my vision of the old mill would be, and that model was approved by Greensboro Beautiful. We put together a budget, which they approved. I took the model to the city and to draftsmen to draw plans for it, and what we have today is the result of that project. This mill building was built, or this replica was built very much the way a mill would have been built in the 1780s. And for the most part, two men who are excellent historical craftsmen built the entire building for us. It's all very much done the same way as it would have been done back then. The mill wheel is outside. Typically, mills of the day, typically mills of the day would have been 3 stories. The farmer would bring his wagon with the grain, whether it be corn or oats or wheat or whatever, into the first floor down below where we are and dump it in the hopper. And then this grain elevator, which is a continuous belt with little cups here, feeds out of the hopper and takes the grain to the third floor for going through a cleaning and sizing process and so forth. Once it is ready to be ground, it comes down the grain chute. There's a little door here that can be adjusted, closed or open to allow the grain to come down. It goes into the hopper, and we have a piece here that allows it to be distributed at different speeds through a hole in the top millstone. Millstone, typically there's a bottom millstone, and then the top one, which is the runner stone. The bottom stone is stationary. The runner stone has a hole in it, and the grain feeds down through and then disperses between the 2 stones, which the top one is rotating with a scissors action, and as it grinds the grain, it moves to the outside, drops off the side, eventually goes down a chute to the first floor where it's bagged, sized, and so forth. This device here is the millstone crane, and these millstones have cutting edges. The top one and the bottom one are exactly the same, except they're reversed. And as the top stone turns, it creates a scissors action. But over time, those stones are so close together that they start wearing, and itinerant millstone sharpeners would come around periodically and resharpen the stone. This millstone crane has a yoke, a threaded rod, and a yoke, and these heavy iron tongs with the hole in them, with the peg in it. The peg goes in each side, the hole in each side of the top millstone. This is attached to the yoke, and then the crank is turned by two men, which lifts the stone up enough where they can actually turn it over and then pivot it around, drop it down on the floor, and sharpen it. Most of the exhibits in here are very, very similar to the ones at the old Guilford Mill on Highway 68 in Oak Ridge. And the folks who are current owners of that mill have been very, very generous with their time and allowed me to come in and take measurements and so forth, and really replicate a lot of the pieces that they have. And so I built these in my shop at home and then brought it in here and installed it. This rope controlled the water flow. It attached to a gate valve up in the water flume. So that determined the speed of rotation of the top wheel. I think that pretty well covers the basics of it.
He's going to follow you everywhere.
Okay. The 10-foot water wheel I had custom made down in Georgia by a gentleman who he's now retired, and I think this was his last water wheel. It actually is not driving anything. We did not want to have anything inside turning or operating that could pose a safety hazard. The amount of water it takes to turn the wheel, since it has no load on it, is about 8 gallons a minute, which is about a standard water hose. Now if you had a load on it and it was turning the millstones and other equipment, you'd need much more water. We have a pump down here that I'm recirculating the water, piping it up top, and letting it drive the water wheel, and then recirculates back in. And then we have a valve that provides makeup water as required. This water evaporates. But the area where we're standing would have actually been part of the mill pond. We'd probably be underwater right now in David Caldwell's original mill pond, which covered several acres and went up on past Holden Road. I think that about covers it in terms of the history and so forth.